Welcome again to In the Corner with Matt. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking me out. Now, it's not often that the professional interest of Alita, that's my wife's name, and I intersect. We are two very different people who do very different things. However, an interesting news story has revealed to me that it's possible that our research interests intersect. According to an Associated Press story, a 13-year-old boy in Bertha, Minnesota, has been barred from attending Mass at the parish where his family normally attends. The church, which is called St. Joseph's Church, has filed a restraining order against Adam Race, the teenager with autism. His mother, Carol Race, as one might expect, was not happy with this development at all. In the court papers, Reverend Daniel Walls, the priest who presides over St. Joseph's, alleges that Adam has been a distraction to others and has actually caused many to fear due to some physical altercations and be uncomfortable due to his spitting and periodic incontinence. The physical danger is especially acute because Adam is over 6 feet tall and weighs 225 pounds. And according to my wife Alita, who's a speech-language pathologist who specializes in working with children with autism, children in Adam's situation can easily be overwhelmed by changes in their environments, by experiencing too much stimuli, amongst many other things. As you might expect, in a church service, even in the orderly mass of a Catholic parish, things could easily happen which could cause a teenager with autism to become overwhelmed. To make matters worse, when this occurs, the child with autism often becomes frustrated and can lash out physically at those around him or her. When the child is young, they're easier to control because they're smaller. However, when they're 6 feet tall and weigh 225 pounds, they're much harder to control and could actually pose a danger to those around them. In light of this, Reverend Walls and other representatives from the church have tried to offer compromises to the Races, such as allowing them to use the crying room of the church or to watch the Mass via closed-circuit television in the church's basement or even at their own home. The first option, being in the crying room, worked out okay until the Races would exit the crying room to receive communion, at which point Adam sometimes became overstimulated or frustrated. The second option was rejected by the Races, though no explicit reason was given. Reverend Walls must have felt that his hands were tied, trying to look out for the best interests of the Races as well as his parishioners, so it was only as a last resort that the restraining order was issued against Adam. This story brings up several interesting points for me. Number one, Carol Race was quoted by the AP as saying that it's considered a sin in the Catholic Church to not attend Mass on Sundays and every holy day of obligation. And that's what this is about. I'm just trying to fulfill my obligations. While as a Protestant I might disagree with this idea of it being a sin, I do understand the Catholic doctrine behind her statements. If the elements of the Eucharist actually become the body and blood of Jesus, as is asserted by official Catholic theology, then to not attend for any reason is an affront to the sacrifice of Jesus. For Carol Race, this issue is not only about the proper treatment of her child with a disability, but it's also a highly charged theological issue. Number two, I think that both sides have perhaps gone a little bit over the line in this case. The church surely could have communicated more, could have tried harder, could have found some other ways other than to involve the legal authorities, and Carol Race has probably been a bit too zealous in getting this story heard by national news outlets. However, I can completely understand why each side did what it did, but I still believe that they have both gone to extreme measures in this case. Number three, and most importantly, this is not an isolated problem and will only continue to grow. Autism has been rightly called an epidemic by lawmakers and health professionals alike. 1 in 150 children born is diagnosed with autism, and it's worse for boys. 1 in every 94 born is diagnosed with autism. On average, every 20 minutes, a child is diagnosed with autism. And to make matters worse, other childhood illnesses receive more funding and attention than autism, even though they are much less prevalent. For instance, leukemia affects 1 in every 25,000 births, pediatric AIDS 1 in 8,000 births, juvenile diabetes 1 in every 500, just to mention 3 who receive more private funding than autism. So whether churches like it or not, if they've not already faced this issue of how to deal with teens and adults with autism, they soon will. It seems inevitable at this point. To better understand this situation, we must talk about what autism is. Autism is officially called Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD, and is a global developmental disorder, meaning that the typical developmental goals that other children reach are either reached very, very, very slowly or not at all by those diagnosed with autism. When a child is diagnosed, they are placed on a spectrum, where on one end he or she has a very high level of functionality, and on the other end where he or she is almost completely incapacitated by this disability. There are 3 diagnostic signs that medical professionals look for when determining whether or not a child has autism. There are delays in social skills, there are also delays in communication, as well as symbolic or imaginative play being hampered. Also, a common symptom of children on the spectrum is that they are highly sensitive to external stimuli and that they prefer routines over changing situations. Depending on where the child is on the spectrum and the level of severity of the stimulus or change, a child with autism will often get extremely frustrated, even expressing this frustration physically whenever there has been overstimulation or change in the environment. So as the child gets older and larger, these physical outbursts become harder and harder to control for the parents and caretakers of the child, and more dangerous to those around them as well. There are ways to help prevent this sort of behavior, such as speech and occupational therapy, behavior modification, controlling the child's environment and schedule and routine as much as possible, amongst many other things as well. So perhaps the saddest thing concerning the story about the races in St. Joseph's Church is that a long relationship has effectively been severed. The Races had been attending St. Joseph's for a decade or so. It was their home, and they meant a great deal to the other members and staff of the church as well. It is a sad situation, no matter which way you cut it. But this story leaves me with a few questions. Number 1, what should churches do to accommodate people with autism and their families? Or should they make accommodations at all? Number 2, how can churches better serve the needs of people with autism and their families? And number 3, if you are a member or a leader of a church, will you talk to someone in your church about these sorts of issues? Because your church will sooner or later be dealing with a situation very similar to this one. Thank you for checking out this vlog on In the Corner with Matt, and please leave a comment for me if you so wish. Thank you.